were able to hear what Aaron had to say. Good morning to you. He's right, isn't he? I mean, you know, people in this country are having been battered and bruised over the course of the last 2 years with COVID. They're now being told by Jeremy Hunt that there has to be a bit more pain. You know, he's a delivery driver, he's a courier, he drives for a living. He says it's becoming untenable, it's becoming ridiculous that the price of fuel cannot be controlled. In fact, worse than that, it's going up again.
Well, first of all, Mike, good to see you and lovely to be on your show.
Thank you.
I'm proud to be the champion of the Sun and Fair Fuel UK's campaign about not just keeping the cut in fuel duty where it is, but actually let's go further. Because to be quite frank, these needlessly, cripplingly high taxes on the motorists is just totally unreasonable, unfair, and I think unjust at the end of the day. And I'm glad the Chancellor this morning has used the opportunity to clarify that the OBR are saying that's a projection, not actual government policy. But I made it very clear to him that I'll be looking and lobbying and making sure that when it comes to March, that 5p at least stays where it is, and there's a freeze, obviously, at that point as well. But you are right to get to the more important point about companies, and that's why we want a pump watch. You know, we know that at the end of the day, there are companies profiteering unfairly off motorists where mileage hasn't changed, but yet they're being hit with extraordinary high prices. And a lot of these companies, even though fuel is costs are down by 40p from where they were, we haven't. In fact, what we've seen is prices go up at the pumps. And with diesel, we've got international companies keeping boats offshore, waiting for a monopoly on the market to see price rises and sell them at a higher price before they bring in that diesel onto UK shores and then putting it into our pumps. So you are right, these companies need to be called out and held accountable. And what I mean by accountable is told that if they don't start doing the right thing, we're going to take that money off them in some way and give that back to the motorist, who obviously is being asked to give them massive profits in their pockets unfairly.
No, very good. Well, I think he'll be pleased to know that, and a lot of people watching this and listening to it will be very pleased to hear that as well. We're going to come on to immigration in a moment, but first let's have a look at this, what happened in Parliament the other day. Jonathan Gullis from Stoke-on-Trent, he said to the immigration minister that there was a problem. Enough is enough on immigration. Let's have a look.
Stoke-on-Trent, decades ago, voluntarily entered the asylum dispersal scheme. But enough is enough. We have done our bit for this country to protect some of the vulnerable people and illegal economic migrants coming to this country via safe countries like France. I am sick to the back teeth of having hotels being used in our great city, being dumped on by Serco because we voluntarily entered that scheme. The local authorities are against it, the police are against it, all three Stoke MPs are against it, and for good reason. We have Islamic extremists like Hezbollah Tahrir round the corner from the hotel operating. We have the far right in our city looking to recruit. We have public anger and outrage at the fact that their local services are being depleted whilst they're having to see them be reinforced elsewhere. When is the Minister going to tell Serco Stoke-on-Trent's done its bit and to no more use it? And if he won't, why won't he?
I think, once again, you speak for an awful lot of people, Jonathan, who have said enough is enough many, many times. We're going to speak later on in this hour to Richard Martin, who's a hotel owner who was offered the opportunity to shut down his hotel and basically just take a load of migrants for a bunch of money. And he said no, quite rightly. But this is now a ridiculous situation, isn't it?
It's embarrassing, to be quite honest with you, Mike. It's enough is enough, quite literally. And I'm, you know, I speak to so many people across Stoke-on-Trent North, Kids Go and Talk, who have just lost all faith that they're going to see dramatic change. And the Minister's response to me, I thought, was just wet and, you know, not helpful in the slightest. And, you know, this is a city that's the 5th largest contributor to the asylum dispersal scheme. Yet in Scotland, despite the massive virtue signalling from the Scottish National Party, only one local authority, Glasgow, ever joined that scheme. So why don't we contact all those Labour MPs?
Yeah. We've just lost your sound there for a moment.
And all those SNP MPs were to be, you know, virtue signal and drop these people in their people out of the country.
Yeah, no, absolutely right. Because in the end, you know, the people who are all for these schemes, you know, the sort of the champagne socialists of Putney and Labour Party, people in your own party, you know, they don't seem to live in any of these constituencies where people are wandering the streets. I mean, there was a meeting in Skegness, I think, in the last couple of days where a lot of angry parents went and confronted the local council and said, you know, what is going on? You know, we've got people being moved into these hotels. They seem to be able to move freely around. We don't really know who they are. And it's not a question of racism. It's not a question of doing anything about, you know, not welcoming people. But we don't know who they are. And they're wandering around the streets. They're near schools. You know, people are worried about it. And whether or not they are right to be worried, what is wrong is that some people are saying, oh, you're just all racist. You just don't want to welcome these people. Well, it's not. That is not the point. And we need to get that across more.
Mike, around Stoke-on-Trent has had around 800,000 people in this city year in, year out. Now got a situation where in some areas it's a ratio of 1 in 30. So for every 30 residents, 1 is an asylum seeker, which is, you know, well above the 1 in 200 ratio. Is not acceptable. You are correct that when the British taxpayer is seeing nearly £7 million a week of their money going on hotels, when we've got people, elderly people, who need to get out of hospital beds and into their homes, why are we not putting in hotels instead and looking after them? Why are we not making sure that as soon as people arrive here illegally, they're having handcuffs slapped on them and they're not having safeguarding checks, and that if they are to be in hotels, they're detained in hotels because we don't know who they are, we don't know what they've done, we don't know what their background is, we don't know if they're criminals or not. Why are we allowing people just to walk away and walk freely? It's completely unacceptable.
It's madness. It's absolute madness. I mean, if you ever said to people, this is what we're planning to do over the course of the next 4 years, people would go, what? Have you gone crazy? And the government is now willfully sort of trying to make it impossible for us to find out where these hotels are. They're asking for people like yourself not to name these hotels because they might be putting people in danger. Well, how about you stop putting people in the hotels?
Well, Mike, also what's amusing about that is that actually, because if your hotel is planning to be used for those purposes, you have to apply for planning permission. So it's a matter of public record anyway, where these hotels are, because of the rules that are in place. And I'm not going to be ashamed of naming and shaming hotel chains that have been greedy, like Britannia, virtually the UK's worst hotel chain, yet wants to use the North Stafford Hotel right opposite Stoke-on-Trent railway station to block buy-up rooms, to kick out homeless people from our city, to put in illegal economic migrants. It's not acceptable. We've done our bit in Stoke-on-Trent. With the greatest respect, this country's done its bit time and time again to help people in Afghanistan, Syria, Hong Kong and other countries across the world. These people are coming from safe third countries. If you travel from a safe third country, you should simply not be allowed to apply for asylum. And if you do come here, we should ignore the ECHR, like we did with prisoners' votes, put them on a plane, get them to Rwanda ASAP, and I bet that'll have a positive impact.
Yeah, I'm sure it will. Jonathan, really good to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed.